Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of you in my mind's eye. To my fellow New Yorkers, happy Sprinter. We've all been eagerly awaiting spring, but what we actually have right now is more like a work in progress. So, since spring is a time of renewal, but we haven't completely left the past behind, and what we have really is a combination of spring and winter, I thought, what better time than Sprinter to explore the idea of the truth. So what really set me thinking about this is one of my favorite websites called Philosophy Bites. There's also an iTunes podcast called Philosophy Bites, and transcripts of the interviews on that website are actually in 3 books, of which these are 2, Philosophy Bites and Philosophy Bites Back. Philosophy Bites Again, I think this is. On this website, David Edmonds and Nigel Warburton interview many philosophers who have expertise in various subjects. And one of the philosophers they interviewed was Peter Lamarck, and he spoke about literature and the truth. And I will try to paraphrase some of his main points and also express some of my opinions and ideas about this because I think it's really interesting. So one of the things that he starts off by saying is that he is a little skeptical. He thinks it's a little misguided in a way to people often talk about how literature illuminates or highlights or showcases the truth or truths about the human condition. And he feels like that may not be the best way to think about about literature, or rather, we should ask ourselves what we really mean. Because in philosophy or in science, certainly, when we talk about something being true or being the truth, we hold it to a certain standard. There has to be, empirical evidence. There's a certain amount of methodological rigor that we have to apply, etc. But that's not the same with the idea of truth in literature. So what do we really mean when we say that literature showcases the truth? So one way, and I'd like to give one of my examples, personal examples, is, a while ago, I actually, when I was in a bookstore, I saw a book by Chinua Achebe, and the title was Things Fall Apart, his masterpiece. And I remember just feeling incredibly moved, just feeling like this was such a gorgeous title. And I'm moved in bookstores in general, but this was, I just felt that it was such a wonderful title. And, so it came back to me when I was thinking about the idea of the truth in literature. And I started thinking, this is a very true. Those words are very true. Things fall apart. Things do fall apart. In fact, it's even scientifically true because of the second law of thermodynamics and the direction of entropy increasing. Things do fall apart in the universe. And then I realized, why was I being such a nerd? I was totally intellectualizing. And the reason why I actually was moved was because it mirrored my personal truth, my personal emotional my personal emotional experience. And because in my personal life, I have seen this play out. I've seen things falling apart. And that's what I saw so wonderfully, beautifully mirrored in those words. And so that's one thing that we mean when we speak of the truth, when we have this flash of recognition, when we immediately recognize something, when we see it mirrored, when we find some sort of emotional resonance to it. That's one way in which we say that this highlights the truth, because we identify with it, we can relate to it. Another thing that Peter Lamarck talks about is the idea of verisimilitude, when something is very similar to the truth. Okay, I just made that up, but I'm sure somebody else made it up before. So the appearance of the truth. So for instance, when someone a writer or a filmmaker or somebody, by a combination of imagination and research, very accurately depict something, and people say that, for instance, about TV shows like Mad Men, very accurately depicting an emotional and socio-cultural experience. So that can ring true to us. So what I'd like to say about this is that I think that for me, one of the problems with the notion of truth is not so much that it's wrong or it's inaccurate, or truth in literature, I mean, because I do think that it's hard to argue with the idea that in the human condition there are certain things which are practically universal. We're all born, we die. Most of us experience suffering in some form and joy in other forms. But the problem with it is that I think that there's the danger that it sort of completely glosses over the diversity of human experience. One person's grief can be so different from another person's grief. One person's love or lust can be so different from another person's love or lust. And I think that for me, one of the greatest things about literature is not just that I see my experience mirrored, but that I know that I can only know truly know, viscerally know what it's like to be me. And it's so incredibly mind-blowing, and it just expands my heart to see somebody else's completely different subjective experience written and described, and to see something completely different like that and be moved by it. So I know I've talked about a lot of heavy stuff here, and I'd love to hear what you all think about this. All right, see you soon. Bye.